Violence erupts as Nigerians protest hunger nationwide. The protest also stems from unbelievably high remuneration for National Assembly members, as against the merger monthly minimum wage of less than $40 for the common citizens. The Naira to dollar exchange rate spiraled out of hand to $1 to N1 600.00 as at end of July. The level of insecurity, including kidnapping, Boko Haram and herdsman insurgency, bad roads, etc., have led to very poor food production. Import duties are beyond the roof. The price of gas at pump stations just got increased by the government by over 800%. Protests erupted in several Nigerian cities on Thursday as citizens expressed their frustration over worsening hunger and governance issues. The demonstrations are part of a broader wave of unrest spreading across Africa, with similar movements in Kenya, Uganda, and Ghana. In Nigeria, the protests turned violent in areas such as the northern Yobe and Kano states, prompting authorities to impose a 24-hour curfew after reports of looting and property destruction. In Kano, a digital innovation park, set to open next week, was stormed and looted by protesters, according to Communications Minister Bosun Tiani. Gunshots were reported in the capital, Abuja, and in neighboring Niger State, where police used tear gas to disperse protesters. Local media reported at least 6 fatalities in Niger, though police claim no loss of life while announcing the arrest of 11 armed hoodlums for looting and arson. In Kaduna State, 3 more people were reported killed, as confirmed by eyewitnesses and Reuters, though the Kaduna Police Command did not comment. Protesters in Abuja clashed with pro-government supporters outside the national stadium. Activist Deji Adeyanju accused the government of organizing counter-demonstrations, a claim denied by police spokesperson Josephine Ada, who said protesters turned violent, necessitating police intervention. The protests, organized under the EndBadGovernance in Nigeria coalition and branded as 10 Days of Rage, call for the reinstatement of a fuel subsidy removed in May, which significantly raised the cost of living. A protester in Abuja told Channels Television that hunger drove him to join the protests. Delafarotimi, a spokesperson for the protest coalition, stated that hunger is uniting Nigerians across different divides, fueling large turnouts nationwide. In response to the unrest, President Bola Tinubu urged calm, warning that protests could lead to violence and setbacks for the country. Despite last-minute government measures, including a doubled minimum wage and tax removal on food imports, protests continued. Protesters also demand action on Nigeria's security issues, including kidnappings and terrorism, which have exacerbated hunger by displacing farmers and disrupting food production. Other demands include reducing governance costs and implementing electoral, judicial, and constitutional reforms, according to a coalition of civil society organizations. The protests mark the first major nationwide movement since the EndSARS demonstrations against police brutality in 2020. Observers note growing public frustration over government spending on luxuries, while many Nigerians struggle with economic hardships. Last year's budget faced backlash for allocating funds to a presidential fleet and residential renovations amid the country's mounting debt and cost of living crisis. Enough is enough, Nigerians say as they protest cost of living crisis, including but not limited to high fuel cost, unaffordability of food materials, Naira nosediving to $1 being exchanged for 1,600 Naira, bad roads, high electric tariff, ridiculously low minimum wage, host cost of housing, high cost of education, etc. In response to Nigeria's worst cost of living crisis in a generation, thousands of predominantly young protesters took to the streets across the country on Thursday. The demonstrations, sparked by soaring prices and bad governance, were met with heavy police presence, leading to clashes in several cities. In Minna, northern Nigeria, 6 people were killed when police dismantled a roadblock set up by protesters. Another person was killed in Kano during police clashes with demonstrators. Social media reports of further fatalities and the use of tear gas in Abuja drew condemnation from rights groups. Organized to last the first 10 days of August, the protests are a reaction to unprecedented fuel prices, high food inflation, rising electricity tariffs, and the collapse of the Naira. These issues have plunged Nigeria into one of its worst economic crises in decades. In Lagos, the usually bustling city was notably quiet, with shops closed and a significant police and military presence. Around 1,000 demonstrators gathered at a major expressway in Ketu, defying police orders to move. Ibrahim Suleiman, a local trader, held a placard reading "End Bad Governance and Hunger is Killing Us." He explained his participation saying, "My children don't go to school because we can't afford it. We're hungry." Despite government attempts to prevent nationwide protests through warnings, concessions, and threats, civil society groups criticized officials for failing to address the root causes of the crisis. Since the government's economic reforms in May 2023, which included removing a fuel subsidy and loosening currency controls, Nigeria's economic situation has worsened. While praised by international bodies like the IMF and World Bank, these reforms have exacerbated poverty and food insecurity, with inflation soaring to 34% and food inflation reaching 40%. Rising insecurity in the northwest and central regions has displaced farmers, further driving up food prices. The government's distribution of food aid, or palliatives, has been seen as inefficient and insufficient. Protester Samuel Ali expressed the general sentiment, saying, "We don't need palliatives, we're not beggars. We want good governance and jobs." In response to the unrest, President Bola Tinubu signed a new minimum wage into law, doubling it to 70,000 naira, or $42. However, with many Nigerians either self-employed or jobless, and some states unable to pay the higher wage, the move is seen by many as inadequate. The protests, echoing those in Kenya over the past month, highlight the growing discontent among Nigerians facing severe economic hardships. As the demonstrations continue, the call for substantial changes in governance and economic policy remains strong.